Okay, so we have some pretty exciting news today with J.J. Watt actually picking an NFL team. He decided to sign with the Arizona Cardinals. I don't know if you want to jump into that first or save that for last, since that's probably going to be the most exciting topic we have for today.
Yeah, let's start with J.J. Watt. I know for the last few weeks, everybody's been speculating on his every tweet on where his destination would be. A lot of talks about Green Bay. A lot of talks about maybe the Cleveland Browns would be the destination, but he ultimately went to the Arizona Cardinals and realigned with one of his old teammates in DeAndre Hopkins. Just a great indication of the downfall with the Houston Texans, and now two of their star players going to the Arizona Cardinals. Jimmy, anything to add on that?
Well, it's actually a funny story because J.J. Watt's original 4 teams to land on included the Cleveland Browns, the Green Bay Packers, I believe the Minnesota Vikings was one of them, and lastly was the Titans, but the Cardinals weren't on that list. Oh, no, Steelers was one of them, because obviously T.J. Watt plays there, but, the Cardinals weren't on that list, so it was like, it caught everybody off guard how he ended up there, which I think is really funny, but, now that J.J. Watt's on the Cardinals, they have Kyler Murray coming up, they have DeAndre Hopkins, they have Larry Fitzgerald, and now on that defense, they have J.J. Watt and Patrick Peterson. So, that's a team that's going to be a contender in the NFC West. That being said, how do you think the NFC West is going to stand this year? If Russ decides to leave the Seahawks, they're going to be without a quarterback. The Niners aren't the team that they were when they went to the Super Bowl, and the Rams, I'm going to say they're going to be contenders with Matthew Stafford. So I believe this division is going to be a toss-up between the Cardinals and the Rams, but I think the Rams are ultimately going to win out because they have that experience. And, the Cardinals are still a young team, but I feel like they're going to get in the playoffs this year. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's really interesting. Obviously J.J. Watt is a great player. But, when I see how much the Cardinals paid him, I can't help but imagine that they paid way too much for an aging player who has really the last 4 or 5 years played 3 whole seasons. He's missed a number of games with different injuries, and so I can't help but think that they really overpaid for J.J. Watt. But I mean, obviously he's on the field. It'll be a great addition to their defense. He'll line up alongside Chandler Jones and Patrick Peterson to make that a pretty good defense if he stays healthy. But staying healthy has always been an issue for J.J. Watt. So let's pray for some good health for him this year. When I look at the NFC West, it seems like at this time Russell Wilson's going to be staying, although there's been rumors that he may be on the move. I just don't see any team really having the assets to, or really the want to trade for a quarterback with that kind of contract. I mean, like we discussed on the previous show, no quarterback has won a Super Bowl with a max contract, and Russell Wilson obviously does carry that about $35 million per year price. So I really don't see him getting moved, but I haven't seen the changes necessary to take the Seahawks to that next step in the coming years, and so I gotta see the Rams as the favorite in the NFC West with the Cardinals sliding in at number 2. I think the Seahawks will probably be 3rd in that division, and the 49ers will be 4th. I think the 49ers are going to be starting a kind of rebuild. I imagine Garoppolo would be moved. They would try to do something with Garoppolo. He just has shown that he's not the quarterback that they need to be a Super Bowl contender. Their defense has been there the last couple of years, but Garoppolo has not been the player that they need him to be. And he really is coming at a great cost financially. So I can see them moving on from Garoppolo in the next 3 years. But yeah, I think the NFC West, I would project the Rams to win the NFC West, Cardinals coming in 2nd, 3rd be the Seahawks, and then 4th be the San Francisco 49ers.
Right. There's no guarantee that Russell's going to leave, and his agent even said that, Russ didn't say he wants to trade, but, if it happens, it happens. He won't be mad at it. And so we'll get to that in a second, but I do want to speak about Jimmy Garoppolo because when he was on the Patriots, he was this great quarterback, back up to Tom Brady. He came in and he won games. We were all excited to see him move to the Niners and actually be a starting quarterback, show off his skills. But what he showed us in that Super Bowl season is that he needed a run game and a defense to be good. He threw a whole lot of interceptions. I'm not saying he's a bad quarterback, but, he needs that team around him to win the big games, which is, he had a nasty run game. He had George Kittle. He had that defense that landed them in the Super Bowl. So, Jimmy Garoppolo should be on the move. The Niners should look for a quarterback, that doesn't need as much help, but, you can still get the job done. So, on to Russell Wilson.
Absolutely.
Like I said, he's not demanding a trade like a lot of other players in the league are right now. But there's speculation that he will be traded. It's a 50-50 chance that he's going to leave. I don't know if the Seahawks want to dish him out. He doesn't seem like, uncontent playing for them. But he did list a name of 4 teams that he'd be happy to play for if indeed a trade were to happen. And it's interesting because 3 teams make total sense. And 1 team stands out to me. So the first 3 teams are the Raiders. Naturally, he would win that starting job over Derek Carr and Marcus Mariota. The Bears. The Bears. Mitchell Trubisky, he's not a bad quarterback. I like the guy. I think he's kind of underrated, but also he hasn't proven his abilities in the NFL. Russell Wilson would definitely take that job from him. The Cowboys, we're in this interesting situation with Dak Prescott where, if he doesn't sign, it would be cool to see Russell Wilson come to the Cowboys. But, that might make Dak a little mad because, like you said, it seems like the Cowboys don't want to dish out the money that Dak wants. But then if they bring in Russell Wilson, they're going to have to dish out that big money. And so it would kind of not make sense on the Cowboys' end to dish out Dak and bring in Russ. But then again, like it would because Russell Wilson's like an elite quarterback and a proven quarterback in this league. The 4th team, this is the interesting choice. He said he wants to play for the Saints, which is very interesting because Drew Brees still has, I'd say, 1 to 5 years in him. So Russell Wilson would have to know that he's content being a backup for those seasons that Drew Brees is still playing because he will not take that starting job from Drew Brees. Like, that's just a fact. Unless he knows something that we don't know. These players text each other in the offseason, like they're friends off the field. So there could be something going on behind the scenes that we don't know about Drew Brees' future in the league, but I highly doubt it. So what are your takes on that?
Yeah, I think, Derek Carr obviously is a mediocre at best quarterback. He had that one MVP year, but since then he's been a shell of his former self and has not been able to lead the Raiders to the playoffs, even with an all-pro running back type player like Josh Jacobs. Has just been a force in this league, and I think he's going to be a force to be reckoned with for years to come. And then I think about, Mitch Trubisky. Mitch Trubisky is going to be a free agent this year. They have 2 really, really bad quarterbacks they're choosing from. Do you want Nick Foles? Do you want Mitch Trubisky? Neither are really very sought-after quarterbacks. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. And then, obviously we talked about the Saints. It's Drew Brees has been pretty mum about what he's going to do. He hasn't really made a decision whether he's going to retire or how long more he's going to play, but that doesn't really seem like a logical thing for me too, because it seems like they're really grooming Taysom Hill. So I don't see, either Deshaun Watson or Russell Wilson being moved. I think there's just too much draft capital that's going to cost these teams. And there's really only a couple teams that I can see having that draft capital to be able to pull off a big move like that. And that's really the Dolphins and the Jets. I mean, those are the 2 teams that have the draft capital to do it. I don't see it happening, with Deshaun Watson or Russell Wilson being moved this offseason. I just think the draft capital and the amount of players that would need to be moved in those trades is too much for these organizations. And I think, really we've seen, obviously, to win, a team requires a great quarterback, but I think teams are much more willing to take a risk on people in the draft rather than give away their future for a quarterback. Even the scale of that trade for Matt Stafford by the Rams was unbelievable. I mean, the Rams aren't getting a first-round pick for like 6 years now. I mean, we're going to be in our 30s before the Rams drafted the first round again. Right. And they traded a first-round pick that they traded a lot of draft picks for to get Matthew Stafford, and so the total cost of that trade ended up being the Yeah, the 2 or 3 draft picks for Goff and then another 3 for Stafford. That's 6 years of first-round draft picks. And so while it's going to be good in the short term with Matt Stafford at quarterback, I have to imagine that their long-term depth organizationally is going to definitely be negatively affected by those moves. And so I don't see either of those quarterbacks being moved this offseason. With that being said, though, that's led me to wonder, what are your thoughts on who's a better quarterback between Deshaun Watson and Russell Wilson, given their contract situations? Who would you rather start off your franchise with, Russell Wilson or Deshaun Watson?
I like them both. Deshaun Watson's a great quarterback. He's young. He has a future ahead of him. Russell Wilson, he's older, but he's proven himself. He has a ring. He makes it to the playoffs. I wouldn't call him a choke artist because, sometimes he doesn't have that line to protect him. Like we were talking about last week. He has all the money, so they can't pay offensive linemen to protect him. If he goes to the Cowboys or the Raiders, they have those O-lines in a way. I mean, the Cowboys, it's not the O-line they had back in 2016, but, there's still something there better than what he has now. So that being said, I'd have to go with Russ. I mean, he is older. He would cost a lot more money, a lot more draft picks. But, he could get the Cowboys to break that ceiling that they've been struggling with like the past 20 freaking years. Depending on Jerry Jones, because, he's a terrible owner, but we're not going to get into that right now. So, I would say Russ over Deshaun, but I wouldn't, be mad at the idea of Deshaun Watson being the quarterback of a franchise either. He's younger. If he goes to a franchise that's a good fit, he could, win a ring or two, and I truly do believe that. But ultimately, I'd have to go with Russ as the quarterback to go with because he is proven quarterback and a proven leader in the NFL. So what are your thoughts on, Russ versus Deshaun? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I too would take Russell Wilson. I think he has a lot more playoff pedigree. He has made the postseason these last couple of years with teams where I'm like, he doesn't have a lot of talent surrounding him. Deshaun Watson has had pretty good teams and hasn't been able to take them deep in the playoffs, whether that's been coaching, personnel, whatever it may be. The big thing, though, that obviously haunts Russell Wilson to this day is the infamous crossing route on the 1-yard line. I think other than that, huge mistake that cost him a Super Bowl and back-to-back Super Bowls.
And that was on Pete Carroll, by the way, not Russ.
That's got to be a hard pill to swallow, and I'm sorry, all the Seahawks fans that are watching this. I know you guys remember that, and I know it's a hard pill to swallow, but Russell Wilson, other than that one mistake, has been a great quarterback. He's had great defenses, obviously, behind him because it's a team game, so you don't win without good defenses. But Russell Wilson, I'd say, would have to get the nod in this situation over Deshaun Watson. Right. Although Deshaun Watson probably will get better over the course of his career, and I'm sure he will. He's still a very young quarterback. He's only been in the league for, I believe, 3 years now. But I still have to go with Russell Wilson with his experience in the playoffs and he's been a consistent performer for the last 3-4 years, 5 years even, and throughout his career with the Seahawks.
Right. Well, that being said, it's been a slow time for the NFL offseason. It's that time of year where not a lot of exciting things happen. There's a couple things. So, that being said, there's a less than exciting topic going on. Desean Jackson and Dez Bryant will both be free agents this year. They're both veteran receivers, past their prime, I would say. Desean Jackson a little on the younger side of Dez Bryant, but they have that veteran leadership. They have that experience in the league. I feel like if they go to a team, they're not going to sign the max contract. They'll probably get the veteran minimum, but they could be good leaders on their team, and maybe even on behalf of Dez Bryant, he could end up being a wide receiver coach at some point. I believe, as a Cowboys fan, it'd be cool to see Dez Bryant come back to the Cowboys. I know that we have CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, Amari Cooper. We don't need Dez Bryant, but he'd be cool to have on the sideline, have as a fourth string receiver just to be back on that team and, kind of have that sentiment of being a Cowboy again before he retires. But other than that, I don't see Dez Bryant making it on too many teams because of his age and his injuries, like his past to injuries. Desean Jackson, he's getting up there. He still has a few years left in him. I believe he's more likely to get signed to a team than Dez Bryant. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would love to see Des Bryant come back to the Cowboys. I think really doesn't make a lot of sense for any other teams to sign him. He's really not a contributor at this point in time, other than maybe distracting the defenses with the name Des Bryant. When people think about his years with America's team and the great memories there, I think he needs to be back with the Cowboys. At the very least to retire with them. But I think more than that, I think he can be a great mentor to the young receivers. Take CeeDee Lamb under his wing. He knows what it's like to play at a high level and play for America's team with the pressure that brings. And I think he would be an awesome fit to mentor CeeDee Lamb and these other young Cowboys receivers. As far as Desean Jackson, not sure what the market's like for him. I remember watching some pretty amazing performances by him with Philadelphia. And really the play that sticks in my mind is when he ran that punt back at the end of the game, a couple of years back when he's still in his prime, and was a game winner. They punted to him when they weren't supposed to, and he ran it back for a touchdown. But the Desean Jackson that's now in front of us is far from that player, and so I really can't see him getting signed by anybody. I think maybe a retirement is in play here, or in the same way as Des Bryant, maybe go back to the Eagles, mentor their young receivers. I know they have, I think it's Rager is their young receiver that they have, but mentor young receivers, be kind of a legacy type player that teaches the next generation and becomes involved in their coaching going forward. Speaking of old players that may or may not be washed, I have to think about Ben Roethlisberger as well. He had a great. Yeah, he had a great season last season, but in the playoffs really fell apart against the Browns. I think he threw 4 or 5 interceptions with a couple more turnovers, and he's not worth I think he's due for a $44 million cap hit this year, and obviously the Steelers are going to have to work on restructuring that. But both sides have discussed wanting to make it work, and so I have to think they will. But really, with the Steelers, their off season is going to be quite interesting. They're up against it with the cap. James Conner's a free agent. Juju Smith-Schuster's a free agent. Marcus Pouncey, their center, retired. And that's just 3 of the other many free agents that they have. And so I'm wondering, as a Steelers fan, what kind of offseason we're going to see and what's the next year is going to look like. And I think the same goes for our resident Cowboys fan here. Jimmy, as you look at the Cowboys and what their outlook looks like for next season, what are some moves you'd like to see happen in order to make the Cowboys back into the contender that you have long hoped them to be? And I think a lot of Cowboys fans lately have been just waiting for that deep postseason run and have been left disappointed. It seems like, with that offensive line that you guys have, I know they've been banged up specifically last year, and Zeke Elliott and Dak Prescott. It just seems like they should be going deep in the playoffs, but they just haven't so far. So Jimmy, what do you think is the answer? How do you think the Cowboys are going to get over that hurdle and get off of Stephen A. Smith's laughingstock list?
Oh, Stephen A. Smith. Okay. I'm going to push the Cowboys to the side for a minute.
How about them Cowboys?
The Steelers and Ben Roethlisberger, actually, a couple days ago, it came out that they restructured his contract, so he will be able to stay with the Steelers, whatever that entails. So we'll circle back to that so you can talk on that more a little bit. But to the Cowboys, the first thing they need to do is get rid of the Jones family. Like, that's just a tumor. And then the franchise, they're terrible owners. They haven't been good since Jimmy Johnson era. That family just needs to go, because once Jerry Jones dies, he's going to hand that team down to Stephen Jones. Sorry, dies or retires. I shouldn't just say that. But he's going to hand that team to Stephen Jones, and he's no better. So the first thing that needs to do is a change of ownership, but that's probably not going to be happening for a couple decades. So, it was exciting to see Mike McCarthy come in. As Cowboys fans thought he was going to be, the saving grace of that team with his experience with Aaron Rodgers, his experience in the playoffs, his Super Bowl ring. But, it just didn't happen on paper. The Cowboys were, set to be one of the good, the best teams last year, but it didn't really amount to anything, whether that be because Dak Prescott got injured or they just, they couldn't live up to the hype. But, on paper, that defense should have been better. I know Jalen Smith and Leighton Vander Esch were struggling with injury. So, what the Cowboys need to see, first of all, is a fully healthy team. They need to draft some help in the secondary on defense because our coverage back there is pretty weak. And then, just start rebuilding that O-line like we had it in 2015, 2016 to be, one of the best O-lines in the game. That's honestly the moves the Cowboys need to make if they do want to be that caliber of a team again. So now that Ben is staying with the Steelers, how do you feel that's going to look on the team? What do you think is going to happen from there? How far do you think, he's going to go with the Steelers? Well, like you said, losing all his teammates potentially.
Yeah, I think, I personally would be for re-signing Juju Smith-Schuster. I would definitely let James Conner go. He is shown to be not the back that the Steelers need. I mean, really their problems last year were based on their running game. Their running game was awful, non-existent. And
they still went pretty far.
James Conner was largely to blame for that, but they had no running game whatsoever. And all the Steelers dynasties have been based on a strong running game. I mean, Jerome Bettis was a great running back for the Steelers. They had Franco Harris.
Le'Veon Bell.
So every single team that has won a Super Bowl, Le'Veon Bell, yes, every single Super Bowl contending team or team that they've had that's been really good, they've had a great running game. And so, my focus in the offseason is getting a running back to the draft that fits their bill. And so my two biggest needs is I'd love to see Justin Fields drop to them in the first round and them snag him to be under Big Ben for a year and then take over as the quarterback for the Steelers. That would be a dream scenario.
Rudolph?
I would love to see not Mason Rudolph. No, I think he's still recovering from getting bashed over the head by Myles Garrett. But that's for another day. But yeah, I would love to see a quarterback, Justin Fields, slide to the Steelers in the first round, and I would love to see a strong, big physical running back drafted in the coming rounds. But really, there's so much to get for the Steelers this offseason. They got to lock up T.J. Watt. T.J. Watt is going to be a centerpiece of that defense for a long, long time. So they need to lock up T.J. Watt. They need to sign back Minka Fitzpatrick, who is, the both of those guys were all pro players this year. So the best of the best at their position. So I need those two things to happen. Re-sign Juju Smith-Schuster and then really build the future through the draft by drafting a quarterback to sit under Big Ben for a year and a running back to be the running back of the future. And really what I've seen with the Steelers lately is they haven't been able to win the big games. I think you'd have to go back to 2010 or 2012 when they last won the Super Bowl. They've had a really good team since then with Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown. But, who would have thought Antonio Brown after that, all those issues that he went through, that he would win a Super Bowl before the Steelers organization did, and that's exactly what happened. And so a lot of stuff needs to happen with the Steelers, but it's been shown many years over that there can be great value found in the later parts of the first round and the second round for quarterbacks. I mean, Tom Brady, the greatest player of all time in the NFL, he was a sixth rounder. Mahomes was a late first rounder. Russell Wilson, I think, went in the third or fourth round. And so the Steelers need to find that person to develop under Big Ben to be that quarterback of the future. And I also, this leads me to wondering about the Cowboys. I think Jimmy, do you think Dak Prescott is going to be that long-term option at quarterback, or do you think they should go in a different direction in the draft? I mean, we've obviously talked about, and I'm going to reiterate again, that a quarterback with max contract has never won a Super Bowl. Do you think they should give Dak Prescott a max contract, or do you think they should look to go in another direction through the draft or through free agency?
Dak, he's a great quarterback, but he hasn't proven himself to be that max contract quarterback just yet. Watching him in 2016, I watched him in the preseason, before Romo even went down with that injury, and I'm like, wow, this kid's exciting. Like, he's good. He could be something special. I was saddened to see that he was like the third or fourth string at that point. But then Romo went down, and the backup at that time, I forget who it was. I think he was injured too. So they shot Dak straight up to starter, and he just went off in his rookie season with the help of Zeke and that O-line. Dez was still on that team. Cole Beasley, Jason Witten, I believe, was still on that team. They still had some weapons, and Dak utilized them. But, I don't think we're going to draft another Dak Prescott. We're not going to go to the fourth round and get another quarterback like that. People doubt Dak. He has his haters, for lack of a better word. Critics. He has his critics. But I do think he's a really good quarterback, and I think he has proven himself in the league, just not to the extent that, people want him to. I'm hoping that, the Cowboys and Dak can reach terms on a contract, but, it's not going to be a max contract. Jerry Jones will not dish out that money for Dak. He doesn't dish out that money for many players. So we might have to go in a different direction depending on how, this offseason turns out, these contract negotiations turn out. And that would, be unfortunate as a Cowboys fan if that's the route we had to take, trusting the entire franchise to a rookie quarterback and just seeing what happens. Because, like I said, it's not likely that we're going to get another 2016 season with a rookie quarterback.
Right. Yeah. Do you think Dak Prescott's going to come back healthier this year and looking as good as ever, or do you think that injury is going to lead him to be much more of a pocket passer than before, and that's going to limit his ability to create plays off play action, create plays that have broken down? What do you think he's going to look like this upcoming year? Because obviously that's a major injury that he went through, and it's always tough for players that are explosive like he is to come back from something severe as that injury.
The injury Dak Prescott overcame was pretty gruesome. It was a pretty bad injury. Some people don't recover from injuries like that. So if he doesn't come back fully healed, or if he comes back fully healed but, just not the same, he might lose that run game, and that would be a huge blow to him as a quarterback, because, that's part of his game. He can pass it. He can, do a option play where he can run it himself. It confuses the defense. It's like, what's Dak going to do on this play? Is he going to run it? Is he going to give it to Zeke? Is he going to throw it? Like, there's a lot of options, and, Dak knows how to utilize those. So if he loses the run game, that takes a whole dimension away from the offense, and, it would be a huge blow to the offense as a whole, and it would definitely, the Cowboys would be worse off for it. So while I'm hoping that's not the case, we've seen in the past that usually does tend to be the case. When Russell Wilson lost his run game after those injuries, every time he was like facing injuries or dealing with injuries, that took a whole element away from his game, and he wasn't the quarterback that we've known him to be. And that might be the same situation with Dak.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, no, I completely agree with that. But yeah, so it looks like we're approaching the 30-minute mark. So again, we appreciate everyone for tuning in this week. What we're going to do for this upcoming episode next week. We'd love to have whoever would watch this video. We'd love to have you guys drop suggestions or comments on what you guys would like us to see. Discuss. What would you guys like us to discuss in the coming episodes? We're happy to make any predictions or talk about any situations, whether it be contract or player situations around the league, franchises around the league, that you guys would like to hear us talk about. We'd love to hear about those. But again, thank you everyone for joining us this week. This was Jimmy, this was Football Talk with Jake and Jim. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you guys next week. Peace out.